Okay, we're back here in the sefer called Kol Doidi Doifek, which is talking about the exile of Yishmael, and we pointed out that Yishmael was the son of Avraham, and he's a whole different type of enemy than all of the other enemies that rose up against the Jewish people. We have our enemies, and they confront us, and they oppress us, and they can even kick us out of the land of Israel and send us into exile, which is what the Romans did 2,000 years ago, and we're still wandering around the world. And yet, Yishmael seems to appear in every single generation. They're always around. And the tension that exists between us and Yishmael, which is the Arabs, seems to be much greater and much longer lasting than any other nation that ever ended up fighting against us and even winning. So we're still figuring out what is the reason for all that. So he writes like this: remember we said there's four main exiles from the four main nations that rose up against us, and there's a fifth one, which is the last and the most difficult. Vugalis Yishmael hanikra Pera Adam. Now Yishmael is called in the Torah Pera Adam, a wild man. Pera Adam, he's a wild man. Now Pera really, besides wild, it can mean like a donkey, he's like a donkey man, like a wild donkey man. So what exactly is he? He's not compared. The other four nations that rose up against us, if you recall in the prophecy that we mentioned from Daniel, so each and every one of them is compared to a different kind of a different kind of an animal, a lion, a bear. But Yishmael is really called an Adam. He's called a man. V'az yoimru Yisrael ba'ofen acher. He's kind of like he's a different type of a person. V'lulei Hashem shayolanu bekum aleinu Adam. Ki liyos Adam l'sibas hayosa ben Avram. Now, why is Yishmael considered to be a man and not just an animal like the other nations? Because he's the offspring of Avram Avinu. Avram was his father. V'yesh lo zechus avos, and therefore he has the merits of the forefathers behind him. K'moshe mitzin lagvan shamar lu Yishmael yichi lefanecha. Like Avram said to Hashem, if only Yishmael would be able to live in front of you, which means this is my son. I can't throw him under the bus completely. This is my son. That's my offspring. So therefore, Hashem, just watch over him. Would you please watch over him? And Hashem says, yeah, no problem. I hear you loud and clear, Avram Avinu. And besides that, Yishmael also has another merit. The other merit is he did bris milah, not just at 8 days old. He did bris milah when he's 13 years old. And that's one of the things that he hangs over the head of Yitzchak. You think you're so great? You did bris milah when you were born, 8 days old. You don't even remember what the pain was like. I was 13. There was no anesthesia. There was no medical care that was going on over there. It was a very, very painful endeavor that I had to go through, but I did it for God. So he has that merit as well. So he has the merits of being the son of Avram, and he also has the merit that he did the mitzvah of bris milah. As a result of that, he's called Adam, he's called a man. And that's why the exile of Yishmael, which again follows us everywhere that we go, is much more harsh than the other four kingdoms that rose up against us.
That circumcision, it was not as complete as Yitzchak's.
Even that being so, he still did it, and he still has that merit, and he was willing to put himself on the line over there at the age of 13 years old and submit himself to a tremendous amount of pain to be able to fulfill that command of God.
Why wasn't it done in 8 days?
Because Avram got the mitzvah of bris milah when he was already 90 years old, and then he was informed that the appropriate time to do it is when a baby is 8 days old. So Yishmael was 13 at the time that Avram received the mitzvah of doing bris milah, so he was 13 years late, so therefore he had to get it done at that time as well. Now, he says a fascinating thing over here. One of the reasons that his name is Yishmael means Yishmael, God will hear his voice. So it sounds like it's talking about the voice of Yishmael. God will hear his voice when he's going to cry out, when he's going to pray, when he's going to ask for something, God will hear him. However, in the future, the Jewish people that will be oppressed by Yishmael, they will cry out loud cryings to God, and then God will hear the voice of the Jewish people and he will answer them. So one of the things that Yishmael does for the Jewish people, which is we always see when we are battling enemies and difficult situations, is it forces us into a world of prayer because we recognize only God can save us from such a thing. So therefore, it's almost like a merit that Yishmael has, besides that he's the son of Avram, besides that he did the mitzvah of bris milah when he was already 13 years old, but his oppression of the Jewish people is going to get us to a place of real heartfelt prayers to Hashem, and then Hashem is going to hear what we are davening for and asking for, and he's going to rescue us as a result. So he brings down in the notes over here on the bottom that the Sforno, who is one of the main commentators in the Chumash, he explains what does it mean that he's Pera Adam, he's like this wild man, this wild donkey of a man. So he says, Peru Chamor Habar. Pera means a young donkey. So on one hand, so Yishmael and his mother was Hagar. Hagar was an Egyptian woman. And from his mother, right, every parent gives something over to their child. So from his mother, who was an Egyptian woman, he gets the aspect of the donkey that's in him. How do we see? Because we have a verse in Yecheskel, in the prophet Yecheskel, which is Ezekiel, who says, Asher basar chamorim besarim. The flesh of the donkeys is like the flesh of the Egyptians. So the Egyptians are compared to donkeys. So therefore, his mother, Hagar, who was an Egyptian princess, she has a comparison to a donkey, and therefore the donkey aspect of Yishmael is coming there. So he's like this young donkey that dwells in the wilderness. Like it says, like Hashem told him, he'll grow up and he'll rest, he'll settle in the wilderness. However, but he's called man, Adam, a human being, from his father who was Avraham Avinu. We find that at the end of his life, Yishmael actually did tshuva. He repented and he returned from doing the bad things. Now, it was too late for his offspring, because he already had children, and they were already grandchildren, and they were already going in the ways of Yishmael. But Yishmael himself, at the end, like he learned from his father, Avraham, how to be a mensch, how to be a proper person, so he did tshuva. So he's a mix. He's a mix of the animalistic aspect of the Egyptians. That's what he gets from his mother. And he's also the saintly and the godly figure that he gets from his father, Avraham. And these two things make him a massive contradiction in this world. On one hand, we find that we mentioned last time maybe the Arabs daven more every single day than a Jew. Because Muhammad, when he came to Jerusalem and he was exposed to the Jewish people for the first time, he came on Yom Kippur. And on Yom Kippur, we know that we don't daven only 3 times a day. We daven 5 times. We daven Mariv at night, Shachris in the morning, then there's Musaf, then there's Mincha, and then there is Ne'ilah. So he saw the Jewish people davening 5 times, and we're going to daven the same. Now, the average Jew during the week davens Mariv, Shachris, Mincha, Mariv, that's 3 times. An Arab davens 5 times a day, every single day. So they have a lofty connection to the world of prayer. And as we might have pointed out before, the Arabs they're not so embarrassed about the fact that they have to pray to God. Meaning, the Jewish people, it was was very comical to me. One year we went, I think it was Sukkot time or Pesach time, we went to Knott's Berry Farm. So all the Jews were out there in Knott's Berry Farm, and we had to make a minyan for Mincha. Okay? So what do the Jews do? They go hide in a corner. They go hide as far and deep in the corner as they can. They don't want to bother anybody. They don't want anybody to see them. So they're like, everyone's sending texts, where we're going to meet, where we're going to meet. We're going to meet in this obscure corner, underneath the tree. Nobody can see us. We're going to daven over there. There were Arabs that were in the park that day in Knott's Berry Farm. And there was a whole family. And in the middle of an area where people were walking around, they rolled out their rugs. And they started bowing down to Allah, whatever they're doing. Right in the middle of it, no embarrassment at all. The Jewish people were like in the corner. They're right out there in the public, and they're very proud of their prayers. So they have special schusim, special merits, because that comes from the spiritual side of Avram, and they have the animalistic side that they have, which is coming from their mother Hagar. Now he writes over here, and he says, "Vine tam evdozeh ben Yishmael l'shar umais." The reason that there's such a difference between Yishmael and the other nations is the shorish sinas b'nei Yishmael lanohu mibnei shehagar chashva shinasis hagvirta b'makom sar. Hagar, let's go back to the story of Hagar, who was the maidservant that Sarah gave over to Avram because she wanted to have children, because she couldn't have any children. Hagar thought that she actually became the number one wife of Avram Avinu. Varak he yalded Avram. She's the only one that really gave birth to a child from Avraham. Kedisa b'Sforno, like the Sforno writes over there, Shechashu shava melech nis Sarah. When Sarah ended up having a child, so it was coming on the heels of her being abducted by a king called Avimelech. And the world was saying, oh, that's not really Abraham's child, because they were living together for 90 years. She didn't have any children. She was abducted by Avimelech. Avimelech must have violated her. And now she has a child. That son must be coming from Avimelech. So Hagar believed that the child that Sarah had was not from Abraham, was rather from Avimelech. And that's what she gave over to her son Yishmael. You should know, you're the only son of Avraham. That other boy that they call Yitzchak, that's not really Abraham's son. That's really Avimelech. And since that's what they thought, so the Arabs believe, based on this, that they are the only real and true offspring of Avraham. And according to them, we're not Avram's sons. That's why they say Avram is the father of Yishmael. He's not our father, because Avimelech is the one who ended up being the father of Yitzchak. Move on, Shapir, Amai Roitzimim Livleyo Sanu Chaim. That's why we understand they want to swallow us up alive. They want to remove us from the world. They don't fight against Hashem, they believe in Hashem. They believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But their claim is, we are not the offspring of Abraham. So that's why they want to remove us from the world. We should not remain a memory of us in the world at all. Just like when you swallow something, it's no longer in your mouth, it's gone. They would like to swallow us up and destroy us. The bus bombings, October 7th, everything they do is to destroy and wipe out the Jewish people. Mashen Cain, on the other hand, B'nei Esav Ushar Umas, when it comes to Esav, our brother, the brother of Yaakov, and our other enemies of the world, they're not fighting against us. Are you really the offspring of Avram? No, they believe that we are the offspring of Avram Avinu, and certainly of Yitzchak and of Yaakov. Their main battle against the Jewish people is they're fighting against Hashem. Either because they serve idols and they're idol worshippers and therefore they don't believe in God, or because maybe even not idol worshippers, but they deny the ultimate truth that there's a God in this world. Kasher Yavo Lalan, we're going to explain this later on, he says. The main purpose of all the enemies that rise up against the Jewish people is they want to nullify us from the service of God. Not to uproot us completely. Now this is going to also bring us into the story of Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is the only nation, the Greeks are the only nation that rose up against us in our homeland, which is Israel, in the main city in Jerusalem, and they let us stay there. They didn't exile us and kick us out like all other nations did, because they said the main thing is just get rid of this God story and the Torah and your avodas Hashem, your service of God, and we will leave you. We're happy to have you in the world. As long as you become like us, we're happy to have you along in the world. And this ends up being the main struggle between the Greeks and the Jewish people. But here he's saying over here that Yishmael is totally different. And the difference of Yishmael is that he doesn't believe that we are actually offspring of Abraham, and as a result, he wants to destroy us completely so that our whole memory will be gone. Nobody should say that we are the rightful heirs to the spiritual throne of Abraham.
We've done a DNA test.
Yeah.
They're willing to take you as converts.
Yeah, well, they show them the light. They want to show them the light.